According to one of the biggest Bitcoin bulls out there, Michael Saylor, the 2024 halving has triggered something unlike anything we've ever seen before. Let's break down Saylor's latest predictions and see if he's onto something truly groundbreaking, or if he's just being his usual hyperbolic self. This is going to be good, folks, so strap in. According to Saylor, this upcoming event is going to be the single most consequential halving in the history of Bitcoin.
You know, what we've got is 900 Bitcoin a day, and around April 16th to April 18th of this year, we're going to go to 450 Bitcoin a day. This will be the halving, but it will be the single most consequential halving in the history of Bitcoin.
That's a pretty bold claim, don't you think? Saylor goes on to explain his reasoning, and it's a doozy. He says that the 2024 halving is the equivalent of someone coming into the market and guaranteeing to buy $8.5 billion worth of Bitcoin every single year for the next 4 years.
It's the equivalent of someone coming in the market saying, I'm going to buy $8.5 billion of Bitcoin a year for the next 4 years, guaranteed. That's the demand impact, right? $8.5 billion, $23 million a day at the current price.
I mean, come on, $8.5 billion per year? That's a mind-boggling amount of new demand that would be hitting the Bitcoin market. Now, I get that halvings in the past have had a pretty significant impact on the price of Bitcoin. But is Saylor taking things a little too far here? Is he maybe getting a bit too carried away with his own hype? I mean, $8.5 billion per year in guaranteed new demand? That's the kind of thing that could send BTC prices through the roof, but is it really realistic? All right, so Saylor's not just talking about the halving event itself. He's also pointing to the approval of Bitcoin ETFs as a major game changer for the crypto market. According to Saylor, the SEC's green light on these Bitcoin ETFs has unlocked over $400 trillion in institutional capital. That's just waiting to pour into the crypto space. I mean, that's an absolutely staggering amount of money we're talking about here. And get this, Saylor says that this flood of new institutional money is going to collide directly with the reduction in Bitcoin's daily supply from the halving. So you've got this dramatic supply-demand imbalance forming, where demand is skyrocketing just as the new BTC coming onto the market gets cut in half. Saylor thinks this is going to spark what he calls a fee war among crypto investment products, as providers scramble to offer the lowest fees possible to attract all that institutional capital. He believes this could drive down the costs of things like Bitcoin ETFs and other crypto funds globally, making it even more attractive for big money to get in. I have to say, I'm pretty intrigued by Saylor's take here. The idea of hundreds of trillions of dollars flowing into Bitcoin as the supply gets cut in half? That's the kind of thing that could absolutely send prices parabolic. And a fee war driving down costs for investors? That's music to my ears. And if even a fraction of that institutional money makes its way into crypto, we could be in for one wild ride. Let's keep digging in and see what other insights Saylor has to offer.
All of the Google and the Apple and the Amazon and the Microsoft networks. So you see, if you didn't have the ASIC, then you would have to spend as much on CPUs as they. And so a big company could overwhelm the system and destabilize it. But because we have a very particular proprietary protocol, SHA-256, a special protocol, and because you can create a very efficient Bitcoin miner, it means that you can constantly upgrade the energy efficiency and the thermodynamic efficiency of that equipment. And that means that whoever controls all the Bitcoin mining equipment can defend the network. And that is profoundly important because that opens the door to defend $100 trillion of assets with only $10 or $20 billion of hardware. Right? And that's a pretty big idea, right? A silicon machine for security. The other implication is when I spend 20 or 30 billion on hardware, the only thing you can do is defend the network. And so if you go bankrupt and someone seizes your equipment, they have to defend the network, right? So the only thing you're ever going to do with Bitcoin mining is to defend the network and secure the network. And that's a very useful feature of the network because naturally what it means is the network has a 12-year security frequency. When it becomes non-profitable to mine Bitcoin, it'll still run for 12 more years. because the equipment is already sunk cost and you can't do anything else with it. And naturally, what happens is once you've invested to know how to build a Bitcoin miner, then you'll keep producing Bitcoin mining equipment even at a 5% variable margin. So you'd sell the first machine for $10,000, you'll sell the next machine for $1,500, you'll sell the next machine for $800 plus $50. So you're going to keep shipping security equipment, even if the price collapses, even if the profitability collapses. And that's kind of ratcheting effect that you want if you want to defend all the world's money.
Exactly. So do you agree that like the scarcity in the ecosystem, and I think it's like in every ecosystem, not only in Bitcoin, is like what drives the innovation in equipments or software, in software that people are building, like Lightning Network or whatever. The scarcity is the main drive for the innovation. So instead of Bitcoin being like something stuck, because it has scarcity inside, it drives innovation instead of being stuck.
When the money is scarce, everything else will be abundant.
Yeah.
And when the money is abundant, everything else you want will be scarce. And Bitcoin represents first order scarcity in the monetary policy, 21 million.
Yeah.
Second order scarcity in the transaction velocity, 7 TPS. Third order scarcity with the hash rate, SHA-256 hashing, and hashing equipment. And fourth order scarcity, only a few people know how to create and manufacture these hashing machines.
Yeah.
And so all of that scarcity maintains the integrity and the security of the network over time. And because the integrity of the network is secured, that means that the Bitcoin can be used as a foundation to build trillions and then tens and hundreds of trillions of dollars of other applications on top of it. The simple metaphor I would offer is consider the schist or the granite that's underneath New York City. That land is 200 million years old.
Yeah.
It hasn't moved. It hasn't moved in 200 million years. You don't want it to move, but you can build 100-story buildings on it, drive millions of cars on it, run electricity through it, launch hundreds of thousands of companies, live hundreds of millions of lives, do trillions and trillions of things. But what is the granite's role? Just don't sink.
Saylor makes some pretty compelling points here. He says that compared to other commodities and assets, Bitcoin is truly unique because the supply can't just be increased with more capital and resources. In other words, no matter how much money flows into a Bitcoin ETF, it's not going to suddenly create more Bitcoin. The supply is hard capped.
And SHA-256 hashing, and not crippling it by saying we're not going to allow you to do ASICs. Because there's a point where some people said, we don't want you to do ASICs, that's cheating.
Yeah.
And there's but with Bitcoin, they let you build an ASIC to generate 256 hashes. And the right answer is to be able to do ASICs, because an ASIC is a silicon machine with a 2,000 to 1 mechanical advantage over a CPU. And that means that you can put $20 billion of capital in the Bitcoin network and defend it with a 2,000 to 1 advantage against all of the Google and the Apple and the Amazon and the Microsoft networks. So you see, if you didn't have the ASIC, then you would have to spend as much on CPUs as they. And so a big company could overwhelm the system and destabilize it. But because we have a very particular proprietary protocol, or SHA-256, a special protocol, and because you can create a very efficient Bitcoin miner, it means that you can constantly upgrade the energy efficiency and the thermodynamic efficiency of that equipment. And that means that whoever controls all the Bitcoin mining equipment can defend the network. And that is profoundly important because that opens the door to defend $100 trillion of assets with only $10 or $20 billion of hardware, right? And that's a pretty big idea.
He also highlights Bitcoin's lack of counterparty risk, meaning no company or institution can default on it. And he says Bitcoin is immune to a lot of the factors that can impact traditional assets, like weather, politics, or corporate execution problems. So in Saylor's view, Bitcoin is the ideal asset to put into an ETF wrapper. It's global, it's the biggest brand in crypto, and it has the best performance history of any digital asset. Plus, it doesn't have all the risks and vulnerabilities that come with traditional investments. In a nutshell, Saylor is saying that the combination of the 2024 Bitcoin halving and the SEC-approved ETFs is going to create a perfect storm of surging demand and dwindling supply. He's predicting that over $400 trillion in institutional capital is going to flood into Bitcoin, driving prices to unprecedented heights. Now, while I can certainly appreciate the logic behind Saylor's arguments, I have to admit I'm a bit skeptical about just how earth-shattering this event is going to be. The specific numbers he's throwing around, like $8.5 billion per year in guaranteed new demand, feel a little too good to be true in my opinion. That said, I do think Saylor makes some really solid points about Bitcoin's unique advantages as an investment asset. The scarcity, lack of counterparty risk, and resilience to external factors are all major positives. And the potential for a fee war among crypto investment products is an intriguing prospect. Overall, I'd say Saylor's predictions are thought-provoking, but I'd encourage all of you to do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Bitcoin is a complex and volatile asset, and no one can predict the future with 100% certainty. So what do you all think? Are you convinced by Saylor's bold claims, or do you share some of my reservations? Let me know down in the comments. And as always, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and join our Telegram group for more crypto insights and discussions. See you in the next one.